spirit will...
Oh, shit.
What the fuck is that?
Oh, okay, we're leaving. We're leaving. We don't want anything. We are going right
Rob,
now.
let's get the fuck out
Go,
of here.
go, 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 go!
We are talking Hell House, LLC 2, the Abaddon Hotel. This is a direct sequel from the 2015 movie Hell House, LLC, a movie that I actually quite liked and gave a 7.5 back in the day when I reviewed it. Then Aaran actually reviewed the director's cut here on the channel, and he actually really enjoyed that movie as well. Now I have to point out the reason there is a director's cut of the original film is that they actually ran out of money whilst they were kind of making it and had to abandon certain scenes, and then when the film was released, go back and kind of make this director's cut. That's important, I feel, because this film feels like it has a little bit more of a production value behind it. The man behind this is Stephen Cognetti, who wrote and obviously directed this movie. And it follows on directly from the original movie. Now, I actually thought this was going to be a kind of almost an anthology, having a completely different story, but it isn't. It's actually a direct sequel. And it focuses on a kind of someone who is connected to the first film, kind of teams up with a group of new investigative reporters and also kind of like a TV sidekick, and they decide that they're going to go back into this Hell House to try and find evidence to implicate this satanic rituals and kind of like this devil worshippers that used to preside in this house. Now, there's an attempt in this movie to massively kind of expand the kind of the mythology and kind of do a little bit more world building. However, a lot of this is done through exposition rather than kind of showing you. And you'll find yourself watching scenes of just people kind of like giving exposition dumps and stuff like that in an attempt to maybe build on the mythology a little bit. And I do think there's a little bit of retconning going on here for the first movie. So, although this film I feel is a fairly well-made film, it has its issues, and we're going to talk about that. So what works, first of all? So I think the fact that this is obviously a direct sequel, you know, fans of the original movie will going to get a kick out of using the kind of this going back to the kind of the same locations and obviously seeing them with fresh eyes and a kind of a new cast. You'd also maybe get a kick out of seeing a lot more on screen here. So this is going to be a positive and a negative in regards, and we're going to come on to the negatives in a minute. But you see a lot more in this film than you did in the first one. And as I've mentioned, the first one, you know, had budgetary issues, whilst with this movie it feels like they kind of have a little bit more money to spend, and as such you see a lot more. So they're a lot more overt with showing you kind of like creepy ghouls on camera and stuff like that. And although that might be quite fun, and some people may feel cheated if you don't see a lot of stuff, I do feel it kind of it maybe kind of takes away some of the kind of the atmosphere. But there is actually quite a lot more on display here. So it also starts a lot quicker in regards to when the kind of the spooky stuff happens. So you're not kind of kept waiting. So it's a lot more overt in regards to its kind of style of horror, which is a little bit different from the original movie. I think the cast all seems pretty likeable here, you know, and fairly kind of well acted. And there are some kind of decent kind of effect shots. The music again is effective, and I think the direction is strong. However, what doesn't work for me, let me get this bit out of the way first of all. If you're new to this one and you haven't seen the first one, forget it. I was surprised how much this ties in and I was struggling to kind of like keep up with it, and I've obviously seen the first one, and you know, I was thinking I'm not quite remembering these people. Who is this? And like it didn't really. I don't feel it kind of give you a good idea to catch you up. And if you're a new viewer, I think you're going to find this movie quite confusing. And even for someone who has seen the first one, it took me a while to kind of like piece together who's who, etc. So that's the first negative. The other thing is this movie is the change in sort of style, making this one more of an overt horror film with a lot more kind of like jump scares and kind of like a lot more on screen. It takes away from what was, I think, the very creepy and foreboding atmosphere that the first movie had, which I really think sold it in being a genuinely scary film. At no point was I ever kind of feeling scared or uneasy with this movie, whilst with the first film I was. There is one fairly effective jump scare that involves this kind of psychic guy, which I thought was quite good. But even just watching the rest of the stuff happening, it never kind of, you know, it never elicited a reaction from me at all, this movie. And I think that's partially to do with maybe kind of showing a little bit too much, and kind of like not having this kind of the build up, and the kind of like this kind of like I said, this kind of like this very oppressive and kind of spooky atmosphere that permeated the first film is just not present in this movie. And we also don't really get much characterization with our cast here. The movie's kind of truncated with these kind of little clips of like a Good Morning America show. So you kind of get to know some of the kind of the backstory of some of the people involved, but some of the other ones you just don't know who they are really. So you never really kind of buy into them, and therefore you don't really care. So this movie, I feel, is you know, it feels like it's trying a little bit too hard to build a little bit of a mythology about what the first film did, and I think it struggles because of that, and kind of almost grinds to a little bit of a halt, because it's just trying to kind of like have this kind of like this kind of bigger picture. And although I appreciate the attempt not just to replicate the first movie, I don't feel it works in its favour. And I think the end scene where we kind of when we meet our antagonist, it's actually quite weak, and there's some quite poor makeup within that scene. Whilst the rest of the movie, I feel it kind of works quite well. There are a few creepy moments here, and it is probably on average better than the majority of sort of cheap found footage films that you get. Because the first one was so strong, this one feels like a little bit of a step down. Not a massive step down, I would say, but one that I think is a noticeable. It's just not as kind of groundbreaking as the first one was, and becomes more of a, you know, so kind of horror film. Then as such, I'll give it a 6 out of 10. But I do think this is worthwhile. But if you would definitely need to see the first one before watching this one, because it just I don't feel it is it's watchable as a kind of a movie on its own ultimately. And unfortunately, it's a little bit too concerned with setting up the next one and kind of building this kind of mythology, unfortunately. So it's a 6 out of 10 for me. Still a pretty decent film. I enjoyed it, but not as good as the original. Certainly not as creepy, but maybe a little bit more kind of a different sort of style. So I'm interested to see where the third one goes, and I guess we'll see. Anyway, 6 out of 10. What did you think of it? Leave me a comment, and I'll look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.